Bill here with the G3 Garage. I just got in a box this week of some new sheet metal that's being reproduced for our 73 through 77 GM A-body vehicles. These are made by Goodmark, which I believe is owned by LKQ, as this box would indicate here. And I ordered everything that was in stock. There's a lot of stuff on back order. But here's a little sneak peek. I'm going to go over each piece here and show you what I've discovered on each one of these. Okay, here are the Goodmark pieces that we have. This one in particular here is described as the front floor brace, and that was on the Parts Geek website. And you can see this is the original. This is my 75 Hurst Olds that has factory swivel bucket seats, and the bracing appears to be pretty darn close as far as the stamping. There are some things I've noticed since I pulled this out of the box for the first time. One of them being, whether you have a bucket seat or a bench seat vehicle, you use this mounting point for the front left corner of whatever seat setup you have. You can see there's a hole punched in the new piece here, but there's no threads in there, so they failed to put a nut cert or weld a appropriate threaded nut to the back side of that. So that's something you're going to have to do before you replace your original. It does have pretty much the correct stampings and markings for other pieces, like the inside front mount for your bucket seat, which is not there if you have a bench seat. But this kit actually comes with these pieces for the buckets. So, and this one has a stud on it already, like it's supposed to. So it's a pretty close representation. And then there's one for the opposite side over here, and you'll see where that mounts right there. So there's an indentation on the new brace, so you can weld that in like this factory one is here. But again, over on the other side there's a hole punch for the outer mounting position of the seat, but there's no threads in there. I don't know if you can see that. Most of the holes that are supposed to be here in the center for like the shifter and the console seem to be there and in the right place. And we'll take a quick look at the back of this. Show you some part numbers. And like I said, the lack of a nut cert or a welded nut on the back of this. Here's some more information on this panel, but it's not an exact stamping, but like I said, it is very close to the original GM. Next piece, this is specifically for the bucket seat cars. This is the rear mount inner for the seats, and you can see it's a real close stamping of the original with like I said, a couple exceptions, one of them being that you have these hold downs that are spot welded on the originals for the seatbelt warning harness. So if you don't have your seatbelt on, there's a wire harness that comes up through here off of the main harness here, runs underneath the carpet over here, and then plugs in to the bottom of your bucket seat. There's a pad for it here on the reproduction, but obviously you're going to have to either try to salvage the one off of your original or make one. It's just basically a metal ear that bends up and down to hold your wire harness. And then the holes themselves are positioned just a little bit off, but I'm sure that's not a big deal. There's enough slop usually in the consoles to where you can get it lined up proper. But these have, like I said, the studs already in them, so you don't have to worry about not having threads to work with. But, I mean, it goes over that pretty nicely. So it's pretty darn close stamping. And then of course we've got what they call the rear floor brace. And you can see it's pretty darn close as well. There are subtle differences, like right here you've got just a straight edge going along here, and if you look at the factory GM, it kind of contours in, comes back out, contours in, back out. This is basically just a straight line on this piece, but I don't see that that would interfere with anything like you know, laying down your carpet or sound deadening or anything like that. It's a very subtle difference in the pieces. And underneath here, I believe there's a body mount, so that's why there's a bubble here. That obviously is not part of the brace, so that is open here, so you can make sure it sits flush around here and not interfere with that. The other thing I noticed is there's an indention here with a hole, and that is for a screw like that that would hold your harness clip like that in that position underneath the rear seats. Or if you have a El Camino, I looked at my 76 earlier, and these appear to be the same braces for the El Camino as well. So I know that the rear floor pans on an El Camino are different because of the longer wheelbase, but again, this seems to be, if not, you know, very similar on the El Camino. The other thing that I did notice was that there were other Goodmark part numbers available for a section of floor back here underneath this rear floor brace. So this whole section, there's a seam here that goes up to the package tray behind the seat here, and it appears that this replacement panel starts right underneath this rear brace and goes up to the seam up there. So if you have something rotted out back here, apparently Goodmark has a part number for that, and I'll include that image here in the video. Another thing I found is they actually have a part number for a complete floor for this GM A-body era, 73 through 77. So it already comes with all these braces already secured to it, so it's basically set up for a bucket seat car. So I'm sure that you could remove this if you wanted, if you had a bench seat car, if it really bothered you. But really the only thing you would need to do is probably snip off the studs, and the carpet would cover everything. But there's a complete floor available, and I'll have that in this video too with a picture. And the other thing was, I noticed that they have half floors. I only could find, I believe it was the driver's side, but I will include that image as well. Another thing I do want to point out for you guys doing bucket seats on these A-bodies, this bracket is quite hard to find. This is, like I said, the bucket seat specific bracket for the rear outer mounting point. So what this does is it relocates the stud where you would mount, say, a bench seat, would go on top of the actual seatbelt retractor, and the bucket seat mounts to the floor. So what they've done is made the point at which the retractor is mounted is actually further back, and then the seat gets mounted here. So this bracket is actually spot welded in here and bolted using the seat belt bolt that goes through the floor pan, and I'll show you the underside of this here in a minute. But this would be somewhat tricky to fabricate, but can be done. Best thing to do is find a suitable donor car if you can, but I'm hoping that Goodmark has this on their radar as well, and I'll show you the other one that I hope they have on their radar too. Alright guys, here's where the seat belt mount comes through, and this is another piece that's basically spot welded from the bottom side to the inner structure here. Basically, I guess this is part of the rocker piece that goes over the actual frame, and it's used to secure that piece down. And I think I may have misspoken about the bucket seat retractor, seatbelt retractor. There's actually another piece, yet again specific to the bucket seat A-bodies. You can see this plate right here. You can see that. Anyways, so it's basically a plate with a protrusion on it, and it's threaded where the seat belt mount bolt would come through to relocate the bucket seat retractor further back away from the seat, so the bucket seat can mount directly to the floor rather than like on a bench seat that goes on top of the lower seatbelt retractor. So just a few more pieces that you still have to scrounge for, since these are not yet reproduced, but I'm hoping, again, this is on Goodmark's radar, to be able to convert a car over to bucket seats if you have original bench seat vehicle. Alright, that's the overview of all the Goodmark stampings that have obviously been released, and some more to come, it looks like. If you would, please subscribe, help out the channel. It's dedicated to 73 through 77 GM A-bodies. Also do a little sprinkling of G-body vehicles. So if any of that seems of interest, like I said, subscribe, share, like, spread it around. Like I said, I want to get as much of this information out to the masses that are interested in these vehicles as possible, and maybe we can bring a whole nother generation to helping revive these things in the coming years. So I'll keep you posted with any new stuff coming out, and I'll try to get in contact with Goodmark to see what the availability will be on some of the pieces that weren't available but do have part numbers. So stay tuned, folks.